What's up, guys? My name is Fari, and I build systems that remove bottlenecks within businesses. And I've been documenting my builds for 131 days now, going all the way up to 365. And in today's video, I'm going to be sharing, how I basically chose what to work on or what I'm actively working on. And I think this video is going to help so many people out there that are trying to figure out what it is that they want to work on, and what actively gets them excited to build into the future. And I think this is unique to everyone, but this is how for me it basically happened. When I was super young, I always had this inkling on something that I wanted to work on. I had this big vision that I never saw, and I don't know why it even came to me. I just never fully understood it. And it came to me from a time when I was in class back in high school, and I basically was, just having a free period, and everyone else was playing and having fun and all that kind of thing. And then, my teacher basically put on a slideshow about SpaceX. And from there, everyone else was playing around, and not everyone was watching it. And I remember me taking the keen eye of just watching and saying, wow, this looks cool. This is something that I'd want to be a part of as well. And before that, even way before that, I had such a deep fascination for just building stuff. And I always had this feeling in my mind. I don't know whether it was placed or whatever it was, but it just wanted to just build cool things. And I never truly fully understood that, because I think one of the most important things as well is that the older I got personally, the more hesitant I became at taking risks and trying a bunch of different things. And I think it's maybe some people may relate to this as well, which is the older you get, the more resistance there is to trying new things and just explore a bunch of different things. And for me, yes, it did happen for me. I used to try a bunch of different things when I used to like sell sweets and stuff like that. And I learned so much from that I still have to this day subconsciously, I have to say. Because when I was selling sweets back in the day, one of the things that I see today is like having a personal brand, and people trusting you as well. Because back then people bought sweets from me simply because it was me, and a lot of people knew me because of that. And that has somewhat translated into now today, in terms of just having that personal brand that people just want to trust you, and also just help you out as well. And it's never something that I've ever thought about in terms of oh, I want to get this and this and that. It's always been a thing of like something that's happened naturally. And the reason why I say this and tying it back is just one of those things that you don't see in the moment, and how it comes together in full circle. And now I somewhat see it today. But going back to how I basically thought about picking what to work on. So basically, I always had this vision for what I wanted to do, and I got more resistance as I grew a lot older. I realized, hey, maybe this is so crazy that it may not even work, and I just put it off. And then when I basically saw that video of like SpaceX, and the rockets blowing up in my teacher's classroom, that brought it back. That brought that excitement back that I will never truly forget. Because ever since then I've had this burning fire to just go for it, to be honest with you. Because if no one is building the future, then why not just try do it myself? That's always been something that I've had in the back of my mind. But like I said, the older I got, the more hesitant I became to taking risks and things of that nature. But least to say, how I basically then thought about it and how it happened was that I was selling sweets, and then I got into building stuff because I've always liked to build stuff. I built a couple landing pages, a couple websites, and things of that nature. And that was something that, got me excited, and I enjoyed it, 100% did. And then one time I basically met with this guy because I wanted to like build planes and stuff like that. And the guy mentioned something that, has always stuck with me. And that is something so valuable that I still take to this day, which is, you see the big things. Like, let's say you take a rocket, for example. You can say, hey, I want to build rockets, or I want to build planes, or I want to build whatever the case may be. I want to build a mall, even. But you can look at that as the overarching goal, and you can also reverse engineer and ask questions of what actively or what actually puts the mall together. The mall has, different suppliers, different distributors. They have people that, build the actual mall. They have people that supply, the materials to build that mall. And then you have the people that ultimately manufacture those materials as well. And solely just understanding that, even in the rocket example or the plane example, you can say that, there's obviously an operator, an airline that ultimately services the people and, gives the flights, or, allows people to get from point A to point B. And then if you go a lot deeper, you realize that there are people or there are companies that are supplying, those airplanes as well. And from there, you realize that there's this whole supply chain where even them, they have people that, supply the raw materials to build those planes as well. And then there are people that manufacture those as well. Some do it in house, some don't, and they ultimately just do that process. And you can even take Apple, for example. Like, the lithium ion batteries are mainly from the mines in Congo. The cobalt is mainly from the mines in Congo, if I'm not mistaken. So, taking that principle of looking down the supply chain in terms of where other people make their contribution as well, you can even take toilet paper, for example, ultimately allowed me to then ask the questions of, hey, if I'm building websites and I'm building all these different things, if I look at the main overarching goal that I want to hit, how can I reverse engineer that and gain one skill that I can become the best at, and ultimately, use that as a moat to ultimately stack the skills, such so that when I get to the overarching goal, which is, for example, let's say I want to build a plane, then I ultimately understand the entire supply chain from the ground up. And that ultimately allows me to then say, hey, this is, deepening my understanding, of how the entire process goes, rather than if I just started building out planes from the beginning. And I think that stage ultimately gives you a much deeper understanding of what it is that you're actively working on. And I think this is why, there are different stages for different phases as well, where you're ultimately building stuff for other people in order to gain that knowledge and fully understand what it is that you're building, and also using it as well. I think there's also so much joy and advantage in also using your own thing that you create, because if you create something and you're not using it, then what's the point? How can you expect someone else to use it as well? And I think that ultimately, comes from that as well, fully just understanding that, if I'm able to, reverse engineer what it is that I ultimately want to do as the end goal, and ultimately start from the baseline and work my way up, that will ultimately get me a far deeper understanding in terms of what it is that I want to build into the future. Because there's so many, variables that you may not even be aware of. For example, like right now, let's say I wanted to build for example, I wanted to build a space station or an airliner, for example. All those things, for example, like with the systems right now, if we have a far deeper level in understanding in terms of systems and how they operate, as well as the human interaction aspect of that, then we can ultimately use these skills in order to build in different industries as well, because this ultimately fuels the foundation for what it is that we can then move into the future. And it's one of those skills that are transferable, and that is how I basically came about it, because I was like, hey, if I'm working on websites and I'm building on landing pages and all of those things, and my skill set is there, but I want to get to XYZ, why don't I start here, which is building out landing pages and websites and all that kind of stuff, and then work my way up, which is building systems, and then from building systems, then we can ultimately move on to the next level. Because there's so many variables, and you need so many reps, in my opinion, in terms of how to actively understand the entire supply chain or the entire process, such so that when you get to the final thing that you want to build, you ultimately have that knowledge and expertise as well, that you've gained through that time of just building stuff and fully understanding the things that you may have not known if you just jumped into it straight away. And that's basically the way that I thought, in terms of building systems, that hey, if I want to get to this big vision that ultimately seems crazy to everyone else except me now, how do I do that? How can I reverse engineer, which is building systems and fully understanding each and every aspect. And then from there, I know that when we start building the final mission thing that we're going to be building, then we ultimately have those skills that we've ultimately stacked, which are still going to be valuable. And that also comes from understanding that in as much as we can talk about this and we can share all these ideas and frameworks and all of that kind of thing, it's also as important to show the depth and level of quality, because the quality genuinely shows how much we love our work. For example, if you take a look at the Ferraris, Enzo Ferrari, you could just tell how obsessed he was about his craft by the depth of the detail in terms of making a Ferrari. Or even if you want to go to SpaceX, you can take a look at how detailed those rockets are. Or even looking at the Apple MacBook or iPhone or whatever device you're looking watching this from, you can see the level of detail, which shows the depth of the founders or whoever the case may be, or the company as well, how much they truly or obsessed and detailed about their product. And that is a reflection of their work. How obsessed are you about your work, and how you're going to do that? And I think everything else will come as a byproduct of that. And I think now this is one of the most important things that I've thought about as well. It's never been a hey, like, let's just make as much as we possibly can, but how can we stack the skills, and everything else comes as a byproduct of that. And knowing that it's such a long journey, it's a marathon, it's not a sprint, and staying there the longest and ultimately just building from there is one of the most that's gonna get us to the grand vision. Because if we move the mission forward of building systems that ultimately power the back end of businesses and allow them to grow exponentially, then that will be a mission worth making a contribution towards. And I think this is one of the things that has excited me for the past year or two, in terms of just focusing on what are the things that I can focus in terms of building, and also allow us to have transferable skills that we can use across different industries as well, that ultimately create value as well. And ultimately building through that, I know that we're going to get there, because our main objective or our main mission is ultimately to build the infrastructure that ultimately powers how businesses operate and function into the future. And that will be the contribution that we can make. And it's more so just about just staying obsessed and just ultimately just going for it. It's about re-engineering, reverse engineering what it is that you want, and you want to work on as well, and what you enjoy as well. Because if you don't enjoy it, you're not going to be able to power through the tough times, in my opinion. Because the tough times are going to hit, and it's up to you, to ultimately just dig a lot deeper and remember your why, because that why is ultimately what's going to get you to build that grand vision. And understanding that it's a stepping stone as well, for the bigger thing that you're going to be working on as well, is also as important. I know that in this day and age, things are changing with the rise of AI and people online and stuff like that. But I know there's a lot of timeless principles that ultimately create a lot of value, and I see a lot of value in that, and I believe in that is the modes that ultimately is gonna get us to the next stage. But that also comes as a result of trying a bunch of different things and understanding how the future is going to play out as well, because the deeper we understand and the levels that we put on there, I know the deeper we will go and the more value we'll be able to create. So I'm super excited, to be honest with you, to be building stuff and finding something that I don't mind dedicating, a couple, tens of, not tens of years, because we don't live tens of years, but decades working on. And I think if you're able to commit to that as well, to say, hey, this is something that I see into the future is going to be super critical to how businesses run and also creates a lot of value exponentially into the future as well. And I think it's something worth chasing. But also doing it in stages and different phases, I think is ultimately as valuable as well. And like I always like to say, we're gonna fail so many times. Not everything's gonna be perfect, but ultimately, as long as we're pushing the needle forward and we're moving forward each and every single day, learning from these videos as well, and just going deeper than ever before, I know that for a fact we're gonna get so much closer to getting to that grand vision. And yeah, I genuinely hope this video serves as help to anyone that's trying to find what they want to work on, what excites them, and what truly gets them to wake up each and every single day and remember the mission of why it is that they're building what it is that they're building. Because I'm super excited. I just want to build stuff and help as many people as possible and inspire them as well, which is part of the things I always say for Killer Chaos OS. But yeah, if you guys enjoy this video, make sure to check out my newsletter that I recently just rolled out. Also check out my X, LinkedIn, Instagram if you want to connect, and I will see you guys in the next video.